Either we have the shortest assembler or the tallest crankshaft. We're not sure which.
Shortest.
Both. Hey, this is Davin with Hagerty, our Redline Rebuild updates. So last time we walked through all the ins and outs relative to the compression ratio, and now we briefly touched on what's next as far as the assembly process. In that, what next is measuring our crankshaft, setting up all of our tolerance or our oil gap relative to the mains and the rods. So that's where I'm at today. Boom. Get my spectacles out. And if you don't need glasses by now to read, you're not experienced enough. That's my new thing. All right, well, we went through and we have torqued all of our main caps down. We've checked all the bearing clearance or the size, if you will, of that bore in 3 positions. I'm not real happy with where it's at, quite honestly. It's weird, it's short this direction and basically the same here and here. So that means the bore's a little bit egg-shaped, and we're talking by, anywhere from that's a lot actually, a thousandths, but a half to a full thou. Since we have to take the block back over to Thoroughbreeze and have the deck cut a little bit more for our compression ratio, I'm gonna have them check that line bore a little closer and make sure everything is spot on and get that cleaned up. So kind of is what it is. Potentially, you could always argue, should have done it the first time, but you know what? Sometimes you don't find it until you check it. And I typically don't check it until now. Whatever. So that's where we're at with this. I got to move on to the rods, make sure all the rods are good relative to their journal size, and then we'll be really close to doing some assembly work. All right, well, hey, we're over here at Thoroughbreeze. We brought our block back over like we talked about yesterday, and Mike went through and checked just I'll say the bare dimension relative to the block and the mains, and he's not seeing what I'm seeing with the bearings. So what we think we have is really just an issue in how the bearings are made. So they're a little thinner on the outer edges and they're thick right dead center. So I'll go back through and I'll just double check them again and get our dimension a little tighter on our clearance. Right now we're at 3 thousandths. I would like to see it at 2.5. And one of the things you can do is you take your caps off and then take a nice flat surface with some 400 grit sandpaper, and you can just lightly sand them and gain a little bit of clearance. You basically bring that cap a little tighter and you tighten things down without being concerned about it, making it a big egg shape. So that's what we'll do. It'll be fine. And then, but right now we're waiting. We're gonna, as soon as we get another block in the machine, we'll take our block, get it in there, and we're gonna skim off some more material and bring that compression ratio up. So, and then we're done. We're just putting it together. Well, you can see we're back from Thurlby. I'll say Mike talked me off the ledge on a couple things. So obviously went through and we decked the top of that. We took another 14 thousandths off. We're at 10 now. So that'll help that compression ratio. And we walked through and he measured these main caps without the bearings in there and gave me the it'll be fine type of thing. But we are going to have to probably touch up our caps. And what I'm talking about is our clearance is just a little bit bigger than I'd like. And what you can do is you can take the caps off and basically lightly sand them, and then basically that lowers them down a little bit, puts a little more squish on the bearing, and it will tighten up that oil clearance. Just that little bit that we want to get. But before I get to that, I'm going to go through and clean the block again. Is this in a really bad order relative to how it should be? Duh. Of course it is, because you should go through all the process and have everything 100% correct and everything is glorious. Well, guess what? You overlook stuff, you make mistakes, you find out new information, and you deal with it. So dealing with it today, two things. Obviously, I got to clean it after we did some more machining to it. And secondly, way down in here, I found that I overlooked the last time. There's a couple areas I would like to clean up for flash, specific on the oil drain back. So before I wash it, I'm gonna go in here, aug that out, blow it out, clean it, get reset, and be closer to our assembly process. Luckily, well, hopefully, we didn't miss anything else. And if we did, we'll catch it. Okay, so block is all clean, and that leads me to my rockauto.com tip of the day. Engine assembly, keep everything as clean as possible, because one little bit of machining, grinding, flakes and all that can make for a bad day. And of course, use a little Dawn, not just for ducks. Let's get this rolled into the engine shop, engine room, and we'll need to clean up these caps one last time, and then we can move along. Here we go. All right, so as you can see in the time lapse, it took a little tedious work of hand sanding the bottom side of those caps. Brings that squish down just a hair, and now everything is good. I'm happy with it, we're okay. From here, we're gonna move forward and work towards our assembly end of things. Now, one thing I wanna clear up relative to last time's discussion, relative to compression ratio. There's some folks that are a little confused, or I confused some folks relative to my calculation for area of a circle. Now, when you measure with calipers, you're measuring a diameter. In practice, you always measure diameter, unless you're doing like a corner and you have a comparator and all that jazz, but that's a whole nother discussion. So you measure diameter. So my point is, why use a formula that uses radius? So that calculation then turns into pi over 4 d squared. Just a point. Now, the other point is, knowledge is fantastic. Applying it is even better and actually has some value. So get out in the shop, go apply some knowledge, and get something done. We'll see you.